Morning, all. All right, so we're going to look at the 1940-1941 season today, a season where Boston, again, finishes first in the league. Now, the league's starting to suffer from the loss of players who are signing up to fight in World War II. And it's something the NHL is going to go through that's going to get worse over the next couple of years. But at this point in time, things stay largely the same standings wise. The Boston Bruins finishing first. Their captain Dick Clapper. So I've got the six captains on the board that are listed. I didn't find a captain for the New York Americans at the time. Um, Might as well just say Red Dutton. He was controlling everything New York Americans related. But Dick Clapper is the captain for the Boston Bruins, who finished the season 27, 8, and 13, 67 points. Second place is Toronto, who are captained by Sil Apps. They're 28, 14, and 6 that season, 62 points. Ebby Goodfellow is the captain for the Detroit Red Wings, who are third, 21, 16, and 11, so 53 points for the Wings. Art Coulter is the captain for the New York Rangers, who are 21, 19, and 8 that season, 50 points, and start to fall off in 1941. We'll get into the curse of 1940 as well. There are various reasons for that curse, apparently. Earl Siebert is the captain for the Chicago Blackhawks. They finished 16, 25, and 7, so 39 points for the Hawks. The Montreal Canadiens pulled themselves out of last place in the league. They finished 16, 26, and 6, 38 points. So they're not what they're going to become, but there's the building blocks there. Toe Blake being the captain, part of it. The New York Americans finished the season miserably, 8, 29, and 11 on the season, so 27 points in just 8 wins and 48 games. So the New York Americans, who are getting towards the end of their run in the National Hockey League, it's been a tough time, and it's going to get worse. So the Habs hired Dick Irvin as coach. Now, Dick Irvin had been coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs, of course. You don't see much improvement in Montreal's record from the year before. However, Dick Irvin will definitely lead them to the promised land soon. Boston finishes first in the league for the fourth straight year. It's the second of those 4 years where they actually win a championship out of it. And the Boston Bruins go on a 23 game undefeated streak, so that's an NHL record. They go 15, 0, and 8 in that undefeated streak. The NHL also sets a fine, $25. Yep, that's the fine for leaving the bench to join a brawl on the ice. On ice brawls are becoming a problem in the National Hockey League. Depending on your point of view, you might view that as a feature more than a bug, but the NHL wants to at least let players know, hey, stop it with the getting on the ice and joining in a brawl. Of course, let's see, this is 1941, so it's 47 years later before the NHL actually does something to crack down on brawls completely. So it goes on for a while. March 4th of 1941, the Bruins set a record with 83 shots in a single game. That's against the Chicago Blackhawks, and Sam Lepresti saved 80 shots in a 3-2 loss. So we'll get to the Ron Tugnut game at some point where he saved a whole bunch of shots against Boston as well in a tie. But poor Sam Lepresti, an 80 save night, and he loses. That's got to still be an NHL record during the regular season. During the postseason, you can definitely get games where a goaltender saved more shots than 80 and still come out with the loss. But yeah, regular season, that's absolutely crazy. Bill Cowley becomes the first in NHL history to lead the league in scoring without scoring 20 goals. So he ends up with enough points to win the what would become the Art Ross. He wins the scoring title, but he does it while not scoring 20 goals in the season. So that is very, very rare. December 15th of 1940, the Leafs win their 7th road game to start the season. That is a record. 7 straight wins to start the season on the road. And so that's a record that stands for a long time. I think that just got broken by the Kings this year, didn't it? So anyways, there we go. So your Hart Trophy winner is Bill Cowley of the Boston Bruins. Your Calder winner, Johnny Quilty of the Montreal Canadiens. A very hockey name right there. The Vezina goes to Turk Broda of the Toronto Maple Leafs, and the Lady Byng goes to Bobby Bauer of the Boston Bruins. That's right. See, if you watch all these back to back to back, it's kind of fun seeing the same names coming up. Now, your league all-stars. Bill Cowley is the first team all-star at center. Sil Apps of the Toronto Maple Leafs is second team all-star. On the right side, Brian Hextall of the Rangers, first team. Bobby Bauer of the Boston Bruins, the second team. I have to say all four, or it doesn't sound right. On the left side, Sweeney Schreiner of the Toronto Maple Leafs is the first team All-Star. Woody Dumart of Boston is the second team All-Star. That entire top line for Boston ends up joining the war effort pretty soon after this, and that'll have a detrimental effect, of course, on Boston for a little bit. On defense, Willie Stanowski and Dick Clapper are your first team All-Stars. The second team, Earl Siebert of Chicago and Ott Heller of the New York Rangers. Ott Heller, you're either going to be in the NHL or you're going to end up being in NASCAR. And then in net, you have Turk Broda, the first team All-Star from Toronto, and Frank Brimsek of the Boston Bruins, second team All-Star. I will be doing a video on the career of Frank Brimsek today, so stay tuned for that. Your leading scorer is Bill Cowley of the Boston Bruins. 46 games, 17 goals, 47 assists for 64 points. Brian Hextall of the New York Rangers is next. Plays 48 games, 26 goals, 21 assists, 47 points. Sil Apps of Toronto, 41 games, 20 goals, 24 assists, 44 points. Gordie Drillin of the Toronto Maple Leafs, 42 games, 23 goals, 21 assists, 44 points. Actually, with Drillin, I thought maybe I could do a career video on him. He didn't play that long in the NHL. There's not a whole lot there. Sid Howe of Detroit's next, 48 games, 20 goals, 24 assists, 44 points. And Lynn Patrick of the New York Rangers has the exact same totals over the same number of games. So 20 goals, 24 assists, 44 points, also in 48 games. Neil Colville of the New York Rangers stays near the top of the pack. 48 games, 14 goals, 28 assists for 42 points. In net, it is Turk Broda's year. For Toronto, he goes 28, 14, and 6, so plays every game. 2.00 goals against and 5 shutouts. He barely edges out Frank Brimsek for the Vezina. Remember, it is to the lowest goals against average in the NHL. Frank Brimsek, 27, 8, and 13, so he played every game for Boston. 2.01 goals against average, 6 shutouts. Dave Kerr of the New York Rangers, 21, 19, and 8 record, 2.92 goals against and 2 shutouts. And Johnny Mowers of the Detroit Red Wings, 21, 16, and 11, 2.01 goals against average, 4 shutouts for Mowers. So we get to the playoffs, and it's still this weird setup. It's this bizarre setup where 6 of 7 teams make it. You have teams 1 and 2 in the NHL playing in a semifinal to decide who goes to the final. Teams 3 and 4 play each other. Teams 5 and 6 play each other in quarterfinals. So it's weird. In the quarterfinals, Detroit and the Rangers in the best of 3 setup. Detroit wins the first game in overtime, 2-1. Second game goes to the Rangers, 3-1, and the third game goes to Detroit, 3-2. So they win the series in 3 games. And then Chicago beats Montreal 2-1 in the first game. Montreal wins at home in double overtime, 4-3 in the second game. Third game, Chicago wins at home 3-2. They win the series in 3. So both of those best of 3 go to the full 3 games. The semifinal does not. Detroit, they win 3-1 over Chicago in the first game. In the second game, they complete the 2-game sweep with a 2-1 overtime victory over the Chicago Blackhawks. So Detroit moves into the Stanley Cup final. Boston and Toronto, they have an epic 7-game matchup in that semifinal. Now, it'll surprise people that Toronto and Boston play a 7-game series, but there you go. Boston wins the first game 3-0. Toronto wins the second game 5-3. In the third game, Toronto wins at home 7-2, so they take a 2-1 series lead, but Boston wins the fourth game in Toronto 2-1. The fifth game, Toronto wins in Boston 2-1 in overtime, so they have a 3-2 series lead, but Boston fights back. They win Game 6 in Toronto 2-1. They win Game 7 at home 2-1. They win the series in 7. There you go. Boston beats Toronto in 7. It's 1941. These things happen. Then in the Stanley Cup final, it is Detroit at one side, it is Boston on the other, and Boston makes quick work of the Detroit Red Wings, although every game's relatively close scoring-wise. 3-2 Boston in the first game, 2-1 Boston in the second game, and then they go to Detroit. They win 4-2 in the third game and 3-1 in the fourth game to sweep the Stanley Cup final and win their final 6 games of the season. So the Boston Bruins win their second Stanley Cup in 3 years. They do not get a dynasty as they don't get the third cup in 4 years, but still pretty solid run for Boston. And the Montreal Canadiens are this giant, this behemoth that are going to rise soon, just not yet. A lot of the players are in place that are going to lead them to that promised land, like Toe Blake, Dick Irvin behind the bench and everything, but we're not quite there yet. And of course, the New York Americans, They're still struggling financially. We will be talking about why they fold, how they fold, and what that has to do with the New York Rangers. And those things are related. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below as always. Don't forget to hit like and subscribe if you've not done so already. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I will talk to you again soon.